All right. Good afternoon, everybody, UK viewers, and good morning for American viewers. And I guess if you're further east than the UK, then it could be late in the afternoon or possibly even in the evening. Before I start talking too much, I'm just going to ask everyone, anyone watching, if you could say hello just in the comments, just so we know that we're not just talking to ourselves, because in theory, this should be live. I know people are asking for the link and all that kind of stuff. Apologies, this is my second live stream, so I don't know if this has actually worked. All I know is there is a little button that says we have gone live. So if you wouldn't mind saying hello in the comment section, that'll be lovely, please and thank you. Ooh, there we go. I didn't know it could do that, so I've put a nice little...
there we go.
Yeah, we can see the comments come up on screen, so I'll turn it off for now. But does anyone feel like saying hello and where they're from? I think I see... Is Hal joined us? Hal, is that... Private. Well,
I can't see the comments, by the way.
You can't see the comments.
Well, okay, I could a minute ago, but they've disappeared.
Okay, so I've got private chat. So Hal is saying hello. Ruben is saying hello. So again, that means people can hear us.
I can see.
Hal's in Florida. That's amazing. Awesome. Live viewer comments show up on StreamYard. This is an example. We'll click the comment to show it. So let me test. Testing.
I've just seen a couple of comments pop up. So Hal and Ruben, hey guys, how's it going? Yes, this is what I sound like. A mank. This is what a mank sounds like.
A Mancurian. Oh, there's people here. So Angela's here. Like, I think I can. Yeah, Angela. That's me testing the comments. Very clever. Molly Hall is here. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. So now that I know people can hear us, I'm just gonna. So I'm trying to look at the private chat and the comments at the same time. Right. So again, morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I've got Nick Smethurst. Oh my gosh, you just told me your name and I pronounced it correctly. Please, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Nicholas D. Smethurst.
What does the D stand for?
Duncan.
Nice. That's a good name, man. That's a good name.
No, actually, it's Nick, but the Duncan, there's quite a cool reason behind it, actually. It's because my mother's a huge Man United fan, and her favourite player was Duncan Edwards, and he died in the Munich air disaster, and she named me after him. So it's quite cool.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not gonna. I'm getting distracted between talking to you and reading the comments. So we've got Elaine from Tenterden. Hey, Elaine. Thanks. Yeah. So today, like I said, it's just me and Nick having a conversation about comic books, LinkedIn, business, etc., etc. First question for you, Nick. What is your favorite comic book or comic book story?
What's my favorite comic book?
Yeah.
Historically, Batman. So I've got over a 30-year run of Batman comics without missing an issue. But if I was to depict one story, it'd be actually I've got it ready. This, The Watchmen. It's timeless, amazing, and the story's so epic, and also the movie adaptation was incredible. For if you're a real geek like me, panel for panel on every single page, how they've managed to do that, they've got it perfect. It's a great story. That's probably my favorite story. Batman wise, probably The Killing Joke is my favorite, I would suggest.
Have you read The Batman That Laughs by any chance?
The Batman That Laughs?
Yeah.
Is it a more modern one?
It's a more modern one. It's basically like Batman and the Joker are the same person. So it's Batman's genius and the Joker's genius in a weird, horrible mix. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm not seeing it. I've not read that one. I've actually not read any Batman comics now for 4 to 5 years, and it just started to cost so much to keep up with it that I just pick up the odd graphic novel here and there these days. So I've got a huge collection. I've got over 5,000 comics, but it's all in a display cabinet. But yeah, but
I'm intrigued
for a while.
Why Batman initially?
So hi to everybody. I can see people saying hello. So yeah, and Batman does kaboom, Ian. So why Batman? Batman because I remember hearing as a kid that Robin had been killed in the Batman story, and it was all over the news. It was a big deal, you know, nobody kills off superheroes. So I went and picked up that particular set of comics. I've got the originals of those comics, they're worth a bit actually. So I went and picked up that comic, and I could not believe that, you know, after watching sort of the Batman stuff as a kid, so, you know, the Kapow, Biff, Boom stuff.
Adam West.
Exactly. Yeah. The comics had gotten so real that they actually killed off Robin. I read the story. Actually, the story is shocking, but not one of the classic sort of Batman stories for me. But that's what got me into it. And from there, I bought loads of back issues. I think that particular comic was 1985, Death in the Family. So I started buying back issues, and then I started buying all the new stuff as and when it came out. So that was the initial thing that grabbed me in the first place.
And again, would you say there was a particular reason you got into comic books? Because like some people say it's quite niche. I mean, they've been going on for, like, you know, for decades, but you've picked a particular time to get into them. Was there anything that kind of prompted it?
There's a few things. So my elder brother was into it. He used to read 2000 AD with Judge Dredd, and that was his kind of thing. I started reading his comic books. He was also into XMen. So my brother's 5 years older than me, and I started reading his comics, and then I wanted to choose my own character though, and that ended up being Batman. So there were some influences, but I think some of it was kind of escapism. The same way we watch a box set now, comic books. There was so much material that I could go and buy all the old issues, all the back issues. They were reasonably priced. There were plenty of comic shops about, not like it is today. So yeah, probably a bit of escapism. I mean, I'm into my video games. I like to go into my own world, and for me, it works. It takes my mind off. Not that when I was 10 years old, I had particular stresses in my life, but I did always like to escape into another universe.
And I'd like to ask you a follow-up question, but I actually need to ask a question to our viewers, right? So there's a few people who are sending messages in private chat, and they've asked me how do they make comments public, and the answer is I don't actually know, because I've always been on this side of it, so I don't know how you make comments on your side. Is there anyone who's watching this could tell other people in the comments how to make comments? Is that making sense? So like Angela, you've been Angela asked what about Dennis the Menace and Nasha. Like Angela, how did you do that? If you're still watching, could you maybe tell them, and I will you know, we'll share that comment, because I honestly don't know how they can get their private chat messages into the comments. I'm very sorry.
So Dennis the Menace and Nasha. So I did read the Dandy and the Beano as a kid. They were kind of the big things. And I remember like the bumper ones coming out each month. And there was a bit of a standoff, wasn't there, between who was the coolest between the Dandy and the Beano. Desperate Dan was kind of the golden.
Definitely the Beano.
Yeah, he was the pin-up. I think the Beano as well, because I think the Bash Street Kids was my favourite. But yeah, I used to read it as a kid, but then I felt like I needed to grow up and get into Batman. But yeah.
Sorry, I'm sending the live link on YouTube as well, because people are asking for that as well. All right, sorry. Okay. Cool. Okay, the next question I have to ask is, would you be willing to share your origin story? You know, skim over some of the other stuff, but like, I'm asking a bit of a leading question here, but like, you kind of exploded onto the LinkedIn scene just before lockdown, or was it during lockdown? And I think other people would like to know how, what, why, when kind of stuff. Is that fair to ask?
Yeah, no, that's fine. The LinkedIn origin is probably safer than the personal origin anyway. I mean, there's no big secret really. We've all been stuck indoors, and I go probably a little bit more stir crazy than most, because I'm probably slightly more damaged in the mind than most. You know, I was working for Whitbread at the time. I was working there up until fairly recently, and you know, obviously in the hospitality industry, things were really tough. So I was on and off of furlough. I didn't do that much furlough actually. So I was quite lucky. But even though I didn't do that much furlough, many of the hotels were closed. I was working from home. I was sat doing meetings online. And, with the extra travel time that I had back, with all the, with less things to do, I go a little bit crazy. And there's only so much video gaming you can play. So I wanted to kind of get into something else. Now, there was a strategic plan, actually, in fairness to it. So, I've loved working for Whitbread. They're an amazing company. I'd worked there a long time, but I had been thinking that I may want to move at some point. I've been working there for 13 years. I didn't feel institutionalized, but I did feel externally, other companies, they do worry when you've worked somewhere too long. It's a bad thing to work somewhere not long enough, but it can be viewed as a bad thing to be stuck to one business for that long. So that had been played on my mind. So the tactic was, because there was a tactic, who do I need to connect with first? So I researched the largest companies in the UK. I researched, found the resourcing people, the HR people within those businesses, and then I started to try and connect with them. Half of the time they wouldn't, so I thought I needed to do something to create a bit of interest as well. So I was then targeting these people, as well as starting doing something that I was really interested in, which was the sayings and origins. And then it went from there. And then, to be honest with you, I couldn't believe that there were that many people that were really interested in it, because I've been called out for being a geek that often, that when someone says, oh, you're gonna have to bite the bullet, I go, I know what that means. And people like, shut up. I don't want to.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
So bite the bullet, that one, there's a few different origins actually to that one, but the one that I went with, and the one that is the most popular, is that back in the First World War, a lot of the nurses didn't have enough anaesthetic, and they would literally give a soldier a large bullet to bite down on before they amputated to deal with the pain. So it's literally a moment. Yeah.
Fair enough. And going back to what you said about working at Whitbread, how did your employer feel about you being online, kind of promoting yourself in this way? Because obviously, like, there's one of the things I've come across, being a newer business, is that kind of social selling aspect and professionalism versus personality. Now, one of the things I think I've mentioned in other streams and other posts, and hopefully I'm not putting words into your mouth, and I'll get to the question in a second, is like, for me, sales, selling, business has kind of come full circle, right? So if you go back to like the 1920s, before mass media, before radio and television, your salesperson was either someone in your town or a door-to-door salesperson, and you brought from them, or you understood them based on their character, right? Who they're presenting to you. And then kind of radio and television and print came about in a massive way, and we all got stuck getting sold to, and it's quite sensationalized. And I feel like what's happened is we've gone full circle, where everyone's gotten used to being sold to, and now we're actually all seeking more interaction. So back to the question, how did your, Whitbread, very, very large employer, very large company, how did they react to you being you on LinkedIn, which has historically been seen more as of a professional platform?
Yeah. So they were really good with that, actually. I mean, like I said, I cannot praise them enough. They're a great employer. They're a modern employer. They understand the niches of, technology and things that are happening. They're very up to date. And as long as I'm not saying anything controversial or political or offensive, then actually, they were very happy with it. They feel that it adds to the brand. And there were some real positives coming off the back of it. So, for example, once I started to kind of build up a little bit of momentum, I had various suppliers that were getting in touch with me that wouldn't have seen me normally, that saying, actually, we can offer you this, we can do this kind of equipment for you. There were, people asking about jobs, and I was linking them with the relevant person, depending on where they were in the country. There were a million and one different things like that. So, it allowed me to be sort of a connection point between the business and some of the people that were on LinkedIn as well. So, I am naturally a bit cheesy. I'm a little bit Disney. I can't help it. It's just the way I am. I don't like swearing on my posts. I don't like anything that's too controversial. And the reason that I don't like that is because I want everything that's on my post to be, my kids can read it, and that's okay. And I don't need to worry about anything particularly bad. So yeah, my dad jokes are horrific, but they're never too edgy where my children couldn't read them. So I guess that's the perfect, the perfect cocktail for a business, that I'm not going to say anything controversial, and maybe I can build up a little bit of interest in the place that I work as well. So yeah, they were really happy with it. That being said, there were a couple of times where a couple of people put a couple of risky comments, and I wasn't sure whether or not I should delete that comment or not. So I very quickly added my views on my own, just in case.
Very good.
Yeah, but yeah, they were happy with it, and I promoted them, before and after. I did a post about how wonderful they are as an employee, as an employer, and that had a lot of views as well. So, and I will still continue to sing their praises because they really are a great company to work for.
Cool. I'm going to go on a massive tangent here. Ian Milsom, hello. Thank you for your comments. I'm not sure what they all mean. Like, are you a real person or are you a robot? I don't know.
Ian's a real person. Ian has messaged me a few times.
Oh, okay. Because like his comments are very confusing. Like, I'm just going to put a few up. Like, he's put like communication, amazing, be kind, and cupboardy. Or then maybe there's a delay in the time. Like maybe he's commenting in live and then there's a slight delay. So when we see the messages, they don't quite make sense. I don't know.
I'm glad you've got the responsibility of reading these messages, mate. Because anything that goes wrong, I'm just going to blame you.
I mean, this was my idea, so yeah, I take full responsibility for any and all things. What is the link to the stream on LinkedIn? That is what customer support says to solve the private chat versus comment issue. Okay, hold on. Let me just get the link on LinkedIn because let's get this done. Sorry. Talk amongst yourselves, people, or comment amongst yourselves. Those that can. Sorry, got on the nose. All right, so in theory, this is the link. I don't know if you guys can copy it from that, but it should be available on the event. So actually, if I put that in the chat, let's pop that there. And maybe you guys can click on that, and that should be able to get you onto the link so you can actually comment, and I can, can riff off of you guys. Yeah, so because it's quite funny, like how we connected. It was over your jokes and surprisingly love of comic book heroes. Like, so I'm actually looking through our chat on LinkedIn, and it basically turns out like we both have the same favorite superhero, and he's one of the underrated ones, right? Yeah,
massively underrated.
So just so you guys know, my favorite superhero is the Silver Surfer, right? And I'll tell you some of the history of the Silver Surfer. So he is an alien, right? But he doesn't come to Earth in the normal way. He's actually from a planet called Zenlar, right? And they're an alien civilization that have reached the pinnacle of harmony and unity. Like, there is no war on Zenlar, and they're so famous for it that other alien species will come there to have like peace accords and them. So they're like, the utopian dream of niceness. Unfortunately, there's this big old like being in the Marvel universe called Galactus. I don't know if we've seen him in any films yet, but he's known as the World Destroyer. This dude eats worlds, right? He's so big he eats planets. And people think he's evil, but he's not evil. He's actually technically a force of nature. He's hungry, so he eats, right? So in the story of the Silver Surfer, like people are like, wow, how can you be so evil? And he's like, look, man, I eat when I eat, and it just so happens that I'm eating this planet, which is Zenlar, which is where the Silver Surfer is from. And before he gets his powers, he's called Norin Rad, which I think that's a very cool name, right? Norin Rad. Anyway, so he's a regular guy, like us, so to speak. He's not silver by nature, and he has a very clever idea. He says to Galactus, look, man, half your time is spent looking for more food. Why don't you give me some powers so I can be your herald? I can go through space, and I can find planets for you to eat. Now, first of all, I think that's a very good business case. That's Galactus outsourcing. And the deal was that Galactus wouldn't eat Zenlar. So that happens. Zenlar gets saved, but Galactus is a bit of a villain. I know he's a force of nature, but was a bit of a villain. He actually moves Zenlar away in space and time. He also erases Norin's memories, right? So Norin his idea was, if I become the Herald, I can move Galactus. I can find planets that are uninhabited and I can save countless lives. But Galactus is like, nah, mate, I ain't doing that. I'm going to erase your memories and you're just going to get me the juiciest planets ever, regardless. So the first couple of issues of the Silver Surfer, the Silver Surfer is a bad dude. And that's how he actually comes to Earth and meets the Fantastic Four. Sorry, I feel like I'm waffling a little bit. The reason why I like the Silver Surfer so much is, right, so he's one of those beings that is akin to Superman. He is super duper powerful. Some people will use the term or phrase overpowered. Like, there's almost nothing he can't do. He can like transubstantiate material if he wants to. He can't really die, right? And for me, that makes him a more interesting character. It makes him less human, but it means that actually the writers around him have to be more clever to make him more relatable. And one of the things I really like about him is meekness, and meekness is one of the things I try and sometimes fail miserably at in my business life, is to exude. Is that the right word to use, right? So the idea, and I think people often confuse meekness with weakness, and I've used this example before in other conversations. And sorry, Nick, I know I'm talking a lot right now.
It's cool.
So meekness, and I'll give an example, right? So me at age 12, I was a very skinny kid, right? Very small, very weak. And actually, I use myself now. Actually, I'm not a big dude, right? I'm 6 foot tall. I'm about 14 stone at best. If I were in the pub, right, and a 6'5" bodybuilder type dude stood on my toe and spilt my beer, and I walked away and went to the table, and I went to my mates, oh man, I was showing meekness by not giving that guy a punch in the face. All my friends would laugh at me because they'd be like, Dale, your punch would do nothing, right? Hear me out. Meekness is the opposite. Is when, if I were Mike Tyson and someone stood on my toe and they were like massive, and I as Mike Tyson don't throw that punch, that is meekness. Does that make sense? Meekness is power under constraint. That's kind of like my kind of definition of it. And that's one of the things I like about Silver Surfer, because half the time he could obliterate his enemies, but he chooses not to kill. Like Batman chooses not to kill. And leading to a question for Nick, because I've spoken a lot, what got you into the Silver Surfer specifically?
Okay, so slightly different to you. The reason I loved Surfer was as much as the character, the surroundings of the character, the unlimited storytelling opportunity of an endless universe with, Silver Surfer visits a planet that is made of, I don't know, living material. Silver Surfer can go anywhere, he can visit anything, he can do anything, and he has, it's just interesting when there's, the Earth is a boundary, and by going outside of the Earth, you're limitless in your storytelling capability. And one of the things that Surfer could do that none of the other comic books could do was give you scenarios that were not earthbound. And I loved that. I loved that because it fueled my imagination to imagine a planet that was actually a giant bug in space. It didn't know, it had no intelligence, but it was destroying everything around it simply by being. And how would Surfer deal with that? Because there were a lot of moral sort of things that he had to deal with as well. So he would have to kill something to save something. How should he do that? And what's the right thing to do? So it challenges a lot of those sort of boundaries out there. But I love the Surfer universe, if you like, as much as the Surfer himself. He is ultra cool, but it was an unlimited comic. And the era that I love the most is some of the comics that you showed me earlier, is sort of the mid-90s. It was penciled by a guy called Ron Lim, and his artwork was phenomenal. But the storytelling at that time, yeah, there you go. So another thing we should bring up about Surfer actually is everybody kind of loves the Infinity War story, but Silver Surfer is the main hero in that story, because he is the only one fast enough to go unnoticed by Thanos in order to try and get back the Infinity Gauntlet. And that whole thing was missed because of annoying rights between Sony and Marvel not allowing certain characters to be used. But anyway, that's a different gripe. So
no, that's a full-on geek gripe, because anyone who knows the Marvel universe and knows about Silver Surfer goes, hey man, they've taken out the main character of this story. Like literally the Infinity Gauntlet. Thanos is pretty much a Silver Surfer villain. Like he obviously is in other comics. But yeah. What are you reading at the moment?
So at the moment, I am reading. It was the Hulk book that I told you that I think it's called The Indomitable Hulk. There's a new Hulk book. So I've got the first 3 books of it. Each of them covers about 20 issues. I buy less and less actual comic books and more of the novels these days. Just pick them up. But yeah, that's really good. It's a different take on Hulk. It's an intelligent Hulk that is having a battle with Banner. Hulk is smart when he changes. So it's a different take on it. It's quite good.
That's cool. And we've got Angela Bates, Silver Surfer. I'm a golden oldie super heroine. That's awesome.
He's just the best. He's awesome. He's cool, and he has power cosmic.
I know, right? It's a cool name. Okay, do you have a least favorite comic book character?
Historically, Superman. Because I used to. First of all, Batman hated Superman. So those of you who don't know the history between Batman and Superman, Batman feels that Superman wastes his power historically. That if he used his power, or if he had that kind of power, he could change the world for good. And Superman is known as by Batman as the Boy Scout, who does what the government say, even if what the government want is wrong sometimes. And Batman feels that the power is wasted on one so good. So historically, I didn't like him so much because he was so shiny and nice, and I liked my dark, brooding, moody sort of superhero. But as I've got older, I've changed my opinion a little bit on that, because actually there is a place for that good, and we need that. Captain America's probably the Marvel example of that. And you need these contrasts. You need these good and bad. You need this yin and yang, and you need to, in the comic books, you need to test what happens to a really good person having to do a really bad thing. And they do that a lot more these days. But when I was a kid, not so much. It was just I am shiny, and yeah, it kind of bugged me a little bit. And it bugged Batman, and I love Batman.
Ian has put www.pinkandfluffy.com, and then he's put an arrow saying Batman. Should we encourage people to look at that, or should I check it out first? Like,
I don't know. Don't put it up on screen, Ian. I hope you've not done anything dodgy with Batman.
I know, right? Like, I feel like we'll switch to that one. And I don't know if I've asked this question already, or if you've already covered it, but I'll ask it slightly more directly. With your comic book reading, how would you say it's impacted your work life in terms of morality and ethics? Has it, or do you see it as something completely separate? Because you said you said from a young age you used it as escapism. Do you see that there are parallels between the comic book worlds, or is it something completely separate between real life?
Yeah, okay. I think it's a really good question. I think that comic books have affected everything in my life because they were such a big part of my life. I mean, like literally I would spend days reading them, hours and hours of a weekend. I would go to Manchester to my favourite comic stores, and I would pick up like rucks of books and spend the whole day reading them. So I think they've impacted everything in my life. Do I think there's some parallels? And there are, and kind of we've talked about this before, Dale. There are some parallels in that if you think about, if you think about it, we've all had a bad boss, right? But nobody's had one as bad as the Kingpin. And, there are loads of evil villains, loads of evil bosses, and there are loads
Can I jump in there? For the non-comic book fans, can you explain who the Kingpin is? Or what?
Okay, so the Kingpin is historically Daredevil's main enemy. So he's a gangster, the head of the criminal faculty, and he is Daredevil's main enemy. He's gone on to be an enemy of other superheroes, but historically he was Daredevil's. And the Kingpin was really bad, but he was a boss. But he was also portrayed as his front was a businessman. There are a lot of similarities between bad bosses and some of the bosses in comic books. But there are other things as well, and this is some of the things. So if you think about it in the workplace, virtually every superhero has had to overcome massive adversity in their lives. So, if you think about Batman, his parents were killed. If you think about Superman, his planet was destroyed. If you think about Daredevil, he lost his sight. If you think about Hulk, he was born out of a terrible explosion. Virtually, Spider-Man, his uncle was killed. All these superheroes in their origins have had tragedy, disaster, and they've had to overcome these difficulties to get on in life. And I think there's a lot of parallels in the workplace that you have goals you need to achieve. There are difficult targets to achieve. There's a million and one things. And another good example, actually, that we were talking about before is that some of the villains have really difficult decisions to make, and you can understand it from their perspective as well. So, for example, in the Infinity War story that everybody knows, Thanos had to make a decision on whether he should destroy half the living beings in the universe in order for the other half to live a good life with resources aplenty for everybody. There's an argument to say, actually, that in a redundancy situation, a company does the same thing. As terrible as that sounds, because
no, that's actually really insightful. I've never actually thought of it that way, because like for the whole entity to remain alive, because that's what companies are, they are an entity. They reluctantly make a very tough decision, because
And probably a more local one, sort of with the comics that I read into the Batman world. The character that I called Ra's al Ghul, the movie's called Ra's al Ghul. He wants to wipe out 90% of the Earth because he feels that humans are destroying the Earth, and it would be better to reset. And as evil as that is, there's an argument to say I understand why that villain is thinking that way. So a lot of the comic books these days have got very similar parallels and difficult decisions to make, and you're not always sat with the good guy, and sometimes the good guys do bad things, and sometimes the bad guys do good things, and sometimes the good bosses make bad decisions, and sometimes the bad bosses make good decisions. There's loads of parallels, but
I'm just going to jump into some of the comments as well. So we've got Ian as well. Ian, thank you for being engaging, by the way. He says, imagine you getting bitten by a spider. Well, hopefully, if it's like Spider-Man, it's a radioactive one, and I actually get some powers. Thwip, thwip. That'd be awesome. Because if it's real life, I'd probably get sick. David's saying he loves this. Again, David, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Hopefully there's some, amongst all the humor, there's some like nuggets and wisdom. And to be honest, I've learned something from there, because I until you said that about the redundancy, which a lot of people faced in the last 18 months, it's not nice. And I can imagine there were a lot of bosses, employees, CEOs, executives who made that decision with a very, very heavy heart. It wasn't necessarily them being, I'm going to save my skin, which some people think, but actually you've just hit on something very, very positive there. Actually, they did it because they knew they had to, and it was a very tough decision. And I can imagine there's lots of business owners out there who made that decision to furlough, redundancy, all that kind of stuff, and they knew what it meant for people, but the choice was taken away from them, and they're not the villains that we perceive. So
absolutely not. And I've worked within businesses where redundancies have needed to happen, and I know firsthand that those senior leaders have felt terrible about it, but they've had to look after the good of everybody. So there are parallels. I mean, to be honest with you, I've gone off slightly on a tangent, but actually, comic books taught me so much. My parents I had a good upbringing, and they taught me my values. But I think a lot of comic books cemented that and challenged my thinking in lots of different ways, and gave me so many new words that I never would have understood before. And I think it's an art. And I think a lot of people didn't appreciate it, but I think more people are beginning to now, particularly with the popularity of movies and TV shows.
Comment from Angela Bates. I'm entering a comic quiz now, and I think I may win. So I'm glad we could be of service, Angela. That's awesome. One of the things I also wanted to touch on is the different ages of comic books. So for our watchers, listeners, if you don't know, there's different kind of ages of comic books, and they actually have a parallel with real life. So there's considered the golden age of comic books, the silver age, the bronze age, and then the modern age. And so the golden age is, by our standards, modern standards, most people don't enjoy them. They appreciate the golden age. So back in the 30s and 40s, when superhero-ness, 20s, was newer, and the stories and plots were a lot more far-fetched, and the reader was perhaps more, I'd say, naive, but willing to suspend their disbelief in the story, right? So you have characters like Superman, characters like Captain America, who are the bastions of morality. They never ever do anything wrong. And as I've noticed, this is my observation of reading comics for so many years, the morality aspect, the black and white of good and evil, has changed. And I'm going to promote a newer book, or a more modern series, Saga. Right now, this one is 18 plus. Do not get this for your kids. Do not let them read it. It's for adults only. But in this is the first episode, first volume of this, and again, it just, going back to what you said about redundancy and stuff like that, it puts it into the bigger picture. Not everyone who is the villain is the villain. Not everyone who's the good guy is the good guy. And I think there's something we can draw from that. Like, maybe if we took more time to see each other's perspectives on these things in the world of work. And yeah, that's going to lead me to another question actually as well. So the way that you've handled 2020 lockdown and all these different things, is there any advice you'd give to people that are still struggling with the aftermath of all this?
I'm still struggling with it myself. I haven't got the answer. I know that I need to keep myself entertained. I know that I found it really, really tough, and I know that at times my kids got me through. So I don't think we're at the end of it. I think things are looking up, certainly in the UK and the US. But then, I'm seeing some of the stuff on the news, and obviously a lot of people on LinkedIn are from some of the places where they're really struggling. I found personally the things that have helped me have been exercise. I find it really difficult when the gym's closed. I'm delighted that they're back open. I did exercise from home. I literally had tubs of paint that I was lifting, and that worked, because I find that exercise, it destroys my negative energy, and I think there's so much of that. I think a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing on the news and a lot of the stuff that I'm reading is stressful, and I need a way to remove that, and that's what the gym does for me. It also sets me up for the day, so that helps. And I don't think you have to go to the gym. I think you can do it at home. There's loads of exercises you can do at home. So that helps. Escapism wise, I love playing on the PlayStation. I need that time to myself. I will really enjoy. Kids are asleep, and then I'm like, yes.
Oh, what kind of games do you play on the PlayStation? Single player games, multiplayer games?
Yeah, I'm quite selfish in my gaming, same as my escapism with comics. So I know that the world plays online. I like to get a game and be selfish and lock myself in a room and play it myself and be absorbed in that universe. So the one I've been playing recently is Resident Evil Village, which I've just finished. I really enjoyed it. But I've always liked my video gaming experiences to be quite selfish. Never really got into FIFA, never really got into a lot of those. I like to play on my own.
I get the impression, actually, despite you being so outgoing, you're actually quite an introverted person, right?
I'm the most extroverted introvert. I've done I've done a few of these types of things. So I've done the Myers-Briggs types indicators. I've done True Colours. I've done about 4 or 5 of these psychological profiling things, and the numbers that I get are quite unusual. I'm there, or I'm there. I'm never there. I'm extremely positive or incredibly negative. I suppose you might say I'm manic depressive, but I'm extreme one way or the other. So yeah.
That leads to a question. So David Holmes asked, "Do you suffer with anxiety?"
Yes.
You do. Okay.
Yes, I do. I suffer with anxiety in a big way, which is weird because in my previous job, so when I was a regional manager, I would have to do public speaking quite frequently. So I would be at times where I would be in a room with 20 people, 30 people, and I've the biggest audience I've spoken, not hundreds of times, but a few times I've spoken in front of more than 1,000 people on stage, and I probably found it more difficult in front of a very small audience. 20 or 30, a room is good actually, but if there were just a couple of people, sat with me, I might find that more difficult at times. So yeah, I do suffer with anxiety, but I know that I do. And weirdly, some of the best public speakers I've ever worked with, there's a guy that I work with at Whitbread, unbelievable, but he has anxiety off the chart. And he gave me some tips on how to deal with these kind of things. So before I would do any public speaking, for example, he said, do you get that thing where you feel like your chest is closing in on you? And I'm like, yeah, all the time, big time. He went, physically force your shoulders back and it will change you. Get a stance that you feel quite confident. So there are a few tips that I got, but I still get it. I still get the nerves before I do any of those kind of things. I had nerves before I came on this. Yeah, I'm not as confident as you might think I am by the fact that I put jokes on. No, I get nervous, but I have ways of dealing with it as well. Yeah.
And just in case that question was also sent to me, I will answer as well. So, do I suffer with anxiety? If you asked me this about 3 years ago, I would say no. Until in 2018, I experienced a panic attack or some depression, as it were. And so I would say actually I was in denial about suffering anxiety. I didn't realize the symptoms. So for me, my journey with it has been a bit different. So I've been on medication for it. And I'm happy to say that actually I've come off the medication very recently. And I have to give promo, like you, Nick, other people gave me advice. So one person, his name's Ash Lawrence. He calls himself the flip-flop psycho, right? He's a very down-to-earth mental health, well-being psychologist. And he told me about something called tapping. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, Nick, at all, or anyone watching this. I'm not going to give it all the details because I am not a licensed practitioner. But essentially, there are points in your body that you can tap, and you have a setup phrase. So you can say, look, even though I'm anxious, I choose to love and accept myself. Even though I'm worried about being on live stream, I choose to love and accept myself. And you set up, right? And then you tap certain parts of your body, which sounds ridiculous and which looks ridiculous. And you say affirming things for a couple of times. And I kid you not, doing that has helped a lot. And what's really cool is the more you do it, your body responds to it. And you can actually start doing it, surreptitiously, or, on the down low. So now, like, you guys didn't see this. I had my hands below the camera, and actually being nervous on the stream, I've been doing this a few times. Sometimes when I'm in the car, right, I'm one of those people that doesn't like being late. I don't know where I get it from. I need to figure out where it comes from. I hate people being in my way on the motorway, even if I've got nowhere to be, right? So I might be visiting friends, like last weekend, visiting some friends in Portsmouth, right? It's a chill day. It's an all-day barbecue type dealy thing. So I'm not in a rush, but there's someone in my way on the motorway and they don't pull over out of the middle lane. So I start getting really frustrated. My wife's like, "Dale, why are you getting frustrated?" She's like, you know what? You're right. So I'll just kind of maybe like have one arm on the steering wheel and I'll do this. And I'm like, yeah. And my body now starts responding to it. So yeah, I recommend tapping. Again, find someone else who actually knows exactly what they're doing. I'm not going to tell people to mess with their brains because I don't know what I'm doing on that one. But for me, it was an alternative to taking medication. And again, not knocking medication, but for me, the medication reduced my anxiety, but it had side effects. And I didn't like the side effects. So sorry. Yeah, thanks, David. That's a really good question. Thank you. Do you have? Yeah, the answer is technically yes, but not anymore.
That you only wanted us to say yes or no, right?
Yeah, no, I'm well aware. He just want to say yes or no, but this is the power of the modern world, right? So we are the TV show, and yeah, we can call it as we see it. We can take it as much time as we want. With great power comes great responsibility. Sorry, I had to say it at some point. Cool. What other questions did I have for you? Do you mind if we go back a little bit? You mentioned about working out at home, right?
Yeah.
And in the acrostic I did this morning, I put H is for hunky. My lord, have you seen his arms? Do you fancy giving a little bit of a gun show, or is that too much to ask? It's too much to ask. It's too much to ask. It's too much to ask, isn't it? I went too far. Oh, look at that. And screenshot. Well, I'll do it as well. Like mine quite out there. Like the definition is not quite.
You're as good as mine.
They're definitely not. They're definitely not. Anyway, this is not professional. We're supposed to bring it back to professionalism.
Exactly.
Sorry.
You did this.
I did. I started it. It was supposed to be me. What's the word? Making sure this stays on track, and I've gone way off track. Yeah.
So,
any more pearls of wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, I've kind of written down the stuff that we were going to talk about. So we were going to talk about favourite movies relating to comic books. We were going to talk about favourite characters, which we've done. We were going to talk about favourite artists, which we kind of covered on. We were going to talk about Stan Lee.
We were, yes. We need to give him respect.
Yeah, so I felt really sad when he passed away, and I felt that there wasn't a big enough deal made out of Stan Lee. So for those of you that don't know, and it's a bit controversial as well, by the way, a lot of people think Jack Kirby and other people should get more recognition than Stan Lee. But similar to a lot of big organisations, whether it's your Zuckerbergs or your Bill Gates and so on and so forth, that a lot of people were involved in these startup businesses. There is usually a figurehead that comes out on top. And it's the same with Marvel. So yes, Stan Lee, there was a number of people that were involved with Stan Lee, but the point is he was the one that stuck with the ideas and really promoted Marvel. And I think that Stan Lee, really the founder of Marvel, although there was involved, should have got a lot more credit when he passed away. It was a big deal. He changed the world. All the major blockbuster movies that you are watching, a lot of the TV shows that you are watching now, are down to the ideas of this one guy. And I've got so much respect for what he did. And he made my childhood happier. And I'm sure he made billions of children's lives happier as well. And I think he changed the world. And I think he should have been made a bigger deal of. So yeah, I wanted to talk about Stan Lee.
No, yeah. I think if he were British, he would have been knighted a long time ago. Like, yeah. He would have been Sir Lee. One thing that we kind of touched upon when we were kind of prepping for this, because we did do some preparation. It may not seem like it, but we did actually do some prep, people. Was Stan Lee and the impact that the X-Men had, because you informed me of this, like he developed the X-Men as a series to combat some of the inequality he saw in the world in terms of race. And I need to give you credit for this because you kind of brought it up as a point, and I realized this, but I hadn't thought about it. Do you mind expanding on that and the X-Men series?
Yeah. So I think a lot of comic books cover a lot of political issues, and they do it very well without the audience knowing. And the X-Men is just one example, but there are others. The X-Men tackles hate of minorities in a very clever way. You'll have obviously seen the movies, and it talks about the mutants. We don't want them here. We need to wipe out the mutants. This group of people that are a threat to our community. And I know that they asked Stan Lee about it, and actually one of the messages was about stopping the hate of minorities or other nations and so on and so forth. And I think the powerful message behind it is that within comic books, they are teaching our children really positive things that make the world a better place. And I think that's really good, the way that they do that. There are other things, bullying and so on and so forth that are tackled in comic books in a very clever way that you might not notice. But really positive messages from really good, strong, valued characters with a really great ethos. I don't think there's any harm. A lot of people think by your kids getting into comic books, they're not in the real world and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of good that comes from that, reading that can improve, their grammar, that can get them to think differently, that can get them to support people with strong values and challenge things that are wrong in the world in a very clever way. So I've probably gone too deep into it, but you get my point.
Not at all. And I agree. And I want to add a follow-up point as well. So even the way that you read a comic book, right? So if you don't know, they're written in kind of panels. So if you are a native English speaker or Western European speaker, it's from left to right like any book, but you kind of jump across the page. And to learn to read a comic book properly actually means that you have to realign the way that you think and the way you read. It sounds complicated, but it's not. But actually doing that enables you to take in the visual awesomeness of the art and actually do the story at the same time. And actually it actually challenges and improves I don't know what the term is, left brain thinking or out of the box thinking, because actually it's not written in a conventional left to right. And hopping onto this, I know you're not an expert on this, I want to touch on Japanese comic books, so manga. Do you ever read manga? Have you ever read any manga, or are you familiar with it at all? I know it's not your specialty.
The only sort of manga I don't even know if it is actually classed as manga, but the classic one for me was Akira, and I read those. They were really dark, but really, really good story. And they did the movie afterwards, which was good, really good, but not as good as the comic book. So not that much manga now. You'll have to take the lead on this one, mate.
I'll be honest. I haven't read that much manga. I've actually watched more anime, and if you don't know, anime stands for animated manga. So it's actually my dad that got me into anime. So he was in the military, and where he was in the military, he got posted to lots of different countries, and he got a very kind of international education, as it were. And he came across anime and manga back in like the 50s and 60s. And yeah, he inspired me to get into it. And what's really cool about it is they have similar superheroes to the Western world, but they have a different, not value set. They have kind of different age ranges for manga. So you've got like things like shonen, which is aimed at teenage boys and all that kind of stuff. But I'll take two examples of characters who are main characters or protagonists who are similar and have a similar kind of status in their respective worlds. So you've got Superman in the Western world, right? He's the pinnacle of superheroes, right? And one of the most famous ones in Japan is Son Goku, right? He's he's an alien from another planet. He comes to Earth and he has powers based on his alien heritage. Different to Superman though, for the first couple of years of his life, he doesn't know he's an alien. Like he's just doing stuff, learning martial arts, has his incredible powers. He's like, oh, I've got powers, right? And the way they handle these characters, so Superman again is usually quite meek, as you said with Batman earlier. He kind of restrains himself. The difference in a lot of manga and anime, I've noticed, is always about pushing yourself to be better, but not in a selfish way. It's pushing yourself to be better to protect your friends, to enable them to have a better life. So it's a lot of it is very sacrificial, and it's all about the power of friendship. And Ian's come up with one. So we've got what about Astro Boy? Have you heard of that at all by any chance? Again, if you haven't, I recommend it. It's a very, very classic anime/manga. Matt Southern, a little bit of One Piece. I've never actually, it's controversial because any anime fans watching this are going to get mad at me. I've not watched One Piece.
I watched it a bit actually because my eldest son was into it, and yeah, so I've watched it a little bit, but not a lot.
What did you think of it when you saw it? Like, have you watched like a start to finish episode?
Yeah, I watched a few, and I thought it was okay, but I felt like I was missing something. I feel like it was like a massive story that I walked in the middle of. So One Piece, it's the pirate one, right?
Yes, it is the pirate one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't comment. I could try and comment.
First of all, Ian asked a very good question. Where does manga come from? So I believe, and if I get this wrong, I'll be really embarrassed. It comes from Japan, the land of the rising sun.
Yes.
Matt Southern, you're dead to me. Sorry, Matt. I failed you. I bring great shame and dishonor upon my family for not having watched One Piece. People keep telling me to watch it, and I don't have to. That sounds really bad. I haven't got the time to get into that particular anime because I know it's super duper long. Like it's been going on for years. Anyway, we are drawing to a close. I realized the time. I didn't actually think we'd be able to talk for a whole hour. No offense, Nick. I was just like, I didn't want to like force the conversation, but you have just been amazing at answering questions, giving insights. Would you mind, or sorry to put you on the spot, do you have like a wrap up statement or summary of kind of things we've
thinking about this before, right? I was thinking like, because I've never done one of these before. I was thinking like, when you get to the end of it, what do you do? Do you like bye? Like what do you do? I don't know. So like, who ends it? Are you going to end it? Am I going to end it? Anyway, I don't know. I've not really got a wrap up.
Okay, if you could give people like one final pearl of wisdom, encouragement, knowledge. It doesn't have to be linked to anything we've said. Just anything you want to tell people. There you go.
My God, we had this green room earlier where we were going to discuss stuff, and this is a major thing that we need to talk about next time. Where you tell me about this kind of major stuff where you put me on the spot. I mean,
sorry.
Have we got any final? No, not really. Just I don't even know how many people have been watching it. But It's been really good fun. I've really enjoyed it. I know a little bit more about you, Dale, and I know that you're real and not a bot. That's good. So, don't know. I've enjoyed it. It's been great. And sorry if I've not been as fun as I come across in my posts, but
no, man. Thank you for doing this. You've been plenty fun. I think this is really cool, and I'll follow up with a summary then. That I want to say, like, it's been great speaking to you like this. For those of you who don't know, Nick and I have never actually met in person. This whole relationship started from his jokes, me commenting and laughing, to then LinkedIn messages, finding out we like the same superhero, we have similar values, and he was like, "Oh, Dale, you seem like a good guy." And when I'm able to, I'll be visiting him or vice versa, and we'll be going for a pint. That's how it came out. And I think that is one of the amazing things, one of the positive takeaways from 2020, that we've all stopped, we've slowed down. How much time do we need to spend working? How much time can we spend working? And how can we reach out and actually build a community? And I'm gonna brown nose a little bit. Thanks to LinkedIn for giving me this awesome power to live stream. And yeah, this is what 21st century networking is all about. Finding people that resonate with you, people who are real, and people who are positive as well. Yeah, surround yourself with positive people and positive things will happen, right? So that's my takeaway. Thank you everyone for viewing. Thank you people for commenting. Angela, Ian, Matt, I know Elaine's here as well, Emma Jane, there's a lot of people here. Sorry for the guys who couldn't comment. So we've got Hal, Garen from Florida, Ruben, again, like generally, thank you guys for engaging, because it makes it interesting when you actually talk to us. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you. Is that how we end it?
Yeah, I'm going to click end broadcast right now.